Hey, everybody, this is Marnie. Welcome, welcome. We're going to be doing a program today called Become an Editor's Favorite Author. Our guest today is Karin Beery, and I'm going to introduce her in just a second. But I want you to know what's coming, and you're going to want to grab some kind of a notepad to take notes, because during the next few minutes, you're going to discover 3 quick and easy ways to impress an editor, the 3 worst things you can do when working with an editor, the best things you can do when working with an editor, as well as the 7 submission components that editors need in order to consider your book. Our guest today is Karin Beery. She is an editor with ISM and Brookstone Publishing Group. After working as an acquisitions editor, she now helps authors move their work from acquired to ready to publish. And if you have a submission you're all ready to put through, you can do that over at ironstreammedia.com. submission-process. And before you do that, I hope you'll listen to this program, because I think you're going to have some really good insights that you're going to get to take away from meeting Karin and hearing the heart of an acquisitions editor. And I'm super excited to welcome you here. Hi, Karin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, so great to have you. And I'm excited to talk about this. We're actually doing this live at the beginning of September 2021 as the beginning of Author Boost Week month at womenspeakers.com for our featured speakers. But this program is free for anybody who wants to tune in, and so excited to get to share this information, because I remember when I was coming, my first book, I was getting ready to be submitted, and I would send it and not hear a word, and send it and not hear a word, and send it and not hear a word. And there's really not much more demoralizing. I guess getting a bunch of no's is also pretty tragic, but not hearing, not knowing if anybody looked at it, not knowing if I did it right. All of those things were disheartening to me as an author.
Absolutely. And then just the waiting. And I often hear, well, it's been 6 weeks. Should I make sure that they got it? Should I reach out?
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely, it's not for the faint of heart, for sure. But hopefully, some of these tips will help any of the speakers, any authors out there. So if nothing else, at least they're improving the chances that those manuscripts are getting read. So even if they're not sure what's happening, they can be reasonably assured that somebody's reading them. So
yes, I love that. And I think that another thing that we want to talk about here is that we're talking about working with an editor at a traditional publishing house. And a lot of these things carry over for any editor that you would work with. But this is what we're talking about today, is working with a publishing house that is not a self-publisher, or I guess, I don't know if we use the word vanity publisher anymore or whatever it is, but you guys are a traditional publishing house, and that's the angle we're coming from.
Absolutely. And honestly, if people are self-publishing, they're going to need to hire freelance editors. Yeah. And a lot of these tricks are going to help in that process as well. But definitely, if you're working with a traditional publisher, these are things that are just going to make the process, because essentially when you're working with an editor, this person has been hired to tell you everything that's wrong with your manuscript. I mean, in a nutshell. And so it's really not easy, even as an editor, to do that, because this is someone's baby. They may have spent years writing this, and you're going to tell them how ugly it is. It's not a fun thing to do. And as an author, that's definitely not easy. But this will just, again, make the process go a little more easily and help the author realize that you're on the same page as the editor. You want this to be as beautiful as possible. Right. So ignoring the bad things, doing the good things, it'll just make it a much more pleasant experience for everyone. So
I can't even believe how blunt you were right there, and I love it. Because I remember I had started writing on my book, and I went to a writer's conference, and she was a best-selling author, and she took out one of her most recent manuscripts, and it was all red. It was all red everywhere. She said, I want you guys to understand that when you see red, this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. We want to get this really excellent, easy to read, so the reader doesn't feel like they're climbing up a hill trying to read your book, but they can just relax and enjoy it.
Well, and actually, I stole this. I used to substitute teach, and there was an 8th grade English teacher that I would substitute for. And she would have her students swap essays, and they would edit each other's papers. Wow. And what she told them was red means love. If your friend does not mark up your essay with red, then your friend does not love you, because they should love you enough to want to help you write the best paper possible. So that's what I remind authors as well. Red means love. If you have an editor that's not marking up your page, then your editor does not love you.
And Ashley, that's a huge red flag. If you get back and, a lot of times I will do something called friend editors. So I send a manuscript out, or even a long blog post or something. I'll send it out to some friend editors, and I right away can identify who's just being nice and who's actually being helpful. And the people who are being nice are being helpful in that they're encouraging me, but they aren't editors. And there's a big difference between someone reading a published piece with an editor's eye versus someone being asked to be an editor.
Right. Absolutely. And I remind people too, just because you can do basic math doesn't mean you can be an accountant, doesn't mean you can be a forensic accountant. Right. So just because you can read with a critical eye or you can write doesn't mean you can edit, because it's all kind of the same basic thing, but there's so many different little aspects that you need to know and understand. Right. They're very different muscles that you need to develop.
And there's even editors that have strengths right inside that, like one niche, checking all the historical facts, one niche, checking all the grammar and punctuation, one, all these different niches. So let's go ahead and dive in, because I want to make sure to cover all this that we promised here today. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. So what are the 3 quick and easy ways to impress an editor?
People kind of laugh about this. It's absolutely true, because they want to know, like, what's that secret? It really isn't a secret. The first thing is know the submission guidelines and follow them. That's it. So often we get just whatever somebody wants to send us, but it doesn't have the information that we want, or it's a big thing too, included in that, you need to know your genre. I was working specifically with women's fiction for years, and I would get things with lead characters that were men. It's clearly not women's fiction. It might be a great story, but I can't do anything with this. So you're wasting your time as well as my time with that submission. Right. So even just getting the right genre and having everything that I asked for, that's a big boost. My agent, actually, because I do write as well, he agreed to read my full manuscript because he said I was only the second author in 6 months who had followed his submission guidelines. Wow. He didn't even read the sample that I sent him. He asked straight for the full manuscript because nobody else was following the guidelines. Yeah. Another one, basic formatting. There is an industry standard, and I'll say it very quickly here, but people should look it up. 1-inch margins, double spaced, no extra spaces between paragraphs, Times New Roman font, 12-point font. It's amazing what people will send you. If it's formatted properly, it stands out because so many come that aren't formatted properly. And just having a basic understanding of grammar and punctuation. You don't have to be an expert, but if you have a comma after every 4 words, clearly you don't understand commas. Just have a basic understanding of those things, and it's going to stand out because it's going to be so easy to read compared to something that's not formatted properly. And then just being professional. And use the editor's name. Please use editor's name. So something that says, "Dear Karin," attached is this. And then at the end, "Thank you for your time. Thank you for reading this. I look forward to hearing from you." Editors are not obligated to read your material. And when you act as if they owe you something because you've finished writing a manuscript, it doesn't start the relationship off on a good foot. So those 3 things right there, super simple. And that doesn't have anything to do with the book. Has nothing to do with your writing style, your ability, or the quality of the book. Those 3 things, because so many people ignore them, those will help you stand out in all the good ways.
This reminds me, working with the speakers too, I always tell them you want to have everything be very clear, congruent, orderly, so that the planner doesn't have any red flags. As we're getting invited to speak at a place, the planner's putting all of her entire effort and program into our hands. We can ruin it, or we can make it better, one of the two. and she has to trust us to make it better. So if she has any concerns about us, she can't go forward. As an editor, what do you put at stake when you bring on a client, an author?
Well, big thing, it's a huge time investment. We're putting a lot of our resources into that. So if you are submitting something to me, it takes my time and my effort to read through it. If it does get signed and you go through the publishing process, there are editors, but there are many editors. There's your first round editor, your copy editor, your proofreader. There's your formatter. There's
Cover
the
design,
format and layout, the cover design. So all of these people are investing their time and talents into this. If you sit back and think, okay, so right off the bat, that's at least 5 other people.
Right.
If they're making a living at this, let's assume that they're making $30 an hour. How many? I mean, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being invested, and that doesn't include
the first marketing, anything, right?
Yeah, the actual paper and printing and distributing. So there's a lot involved. So if you are going to ask someone to invest, and that's the big difference between the self-publishing and the publishing. When you do it yourself, you take on all of that. When you're traditionally publishing, you're asking someone else to take that risk. I want you to invest thousands of dollars in me and trust that this is a good book, that I'm going to help market it, that people are going to buy it, and you're going to get your money back. So there is a lot of time and a lot of financial investment in this. So that's why you want to do, as an author, everything that you can on your side first, so that when it gets to the publisher, they don't have to invest as much time, which means that it's going to be cleaned up faster. It can get out to the market faster, which means you can write another book. When you just start doing everything to the best of your ability straight from the get-go, it puts everybody, in the right lane for this race. You're not all going to be fighting each other and, trying to pass the baton and jump. You're all going to be able to run it well and at the same pace. It just sets everything up for good experience for everyone involved.
And I loved how you said your agent went straight past your proposal and into your manuscript because he felt like this person knows what they're doing. This is going to be a good book because I can already tell they've invested everything they needed to invest to make it a good book. So
well, and that's just exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes, because he knew I took the time to find out what he wanted, and I took the time to give him what he asked for. So he knew then that if he submitted my manuscript to a publisher, if they came and asked me to do something, he knew I would do it.
You were going to do it. And you were going to delight them just like you had delighted him.
Exactly. And that's what you're hoping for. That is the dream. Not that I'm the ideal author, but that's what you want.
Good. What are the 3 worst things to do when working with an editor?
Oh, goodness. The first one is to be the know-it-all that comes in and you're going to tell the editor what you need. Very rarely do you know what you need. That's why you need an editor. So when you come in and say, well, I've got characterization down, I just need you to check the plot and make sure. That's not how it works. The editor is going to evaluate the manuscript and they're going to tell you what they think is best for it. So even if you think your characterization is perfect, or even if you are writing nonfiction and you think everything is organized perfectly, they're going to look at it and say, no, this isn't clear. This is pretty weak here. If you think you already know what it needs, you're going to be difficult to work with. So you need to go in trusting them. So don't tell them what you need. Just be willing to take the advice that they give you. Right, kind of in the same way that is arguing. When you get an edit back, don't come back and argue with the editor. Don't come back and say, well, this might be confusing to you, but I think this, I love this one. I think the reader will understand. Well, I actually read the book because I had to read it as the editor, and I'm telling you it's confusing. So don't argue. Take the comments, process them, see what you can do to make it work. Or don't ignore the comments. I've had situations, both as a freelance editor and at the publishing house, where the comments I sent were just straight up ignored. And that makes the process longer. It can throw everybody off track and can throw everything off schedule. And there have been times when that happens, when they'll just give you the rights back to your book. If you're going to ignore what the editor is saying, if you're going to argue with everything, you'll throw everybody off. You're going to waste time and money. And in some tough situations, the publisher will say, it's not worth it. You can have your rights back.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody wants to do that. It's not fun for the editor. It's not fun for the author. No. It's just not a fun situation.
I want to just really quickly address something that I hear new authors say a lot. They say, well, the Holy Spirit gave me this, and I really don't feel like it should be edited very much. And I'm going to answer my answer to that. And then I'm going to let you address that. So what I say is, I say that God loves body life. He loves body life. He loves having somebody be the head and a different person be the shoulders and a different person be the elbow and a different person be the hand. And one of the roles is to actually take a download and do our best writing it the way that we felt like we heard it, and then passing it to people who have other skills and talents that can help make it editable by others. So it's a different person who does the farming, then who does the processing, then who does the gourmet cooking, then who does the serving to the table. I mean, they're all different people. And if one person had to do it all, it just wouldn't work out. So I feel like there's room for you to say, God gave this to me, and still to embrace the assistance that God also gives to you.
Absolutely. And the way I approach this is, well, how would you feel if other industries said that? So how would you feel if you walked into the oncologist's office and your oncologist said, I know you're here for cancer treatment. God told me that I was to be an oncologist. I haven't gone to med school. I haven't even gotten my bachelor's degree yet, but I know that this is what God's calling me to do, and God's showing me how to interact with patients. So let's go ahead and let's figure out how to treat you. Would you trust that oncologist? Absolutely not. Like, God calls people to be doctors. He calls them to be lawyers. You would not hire those professionals if they didn't have all of that education and experience behind them. But because publishing has become so easy and so accessible, people assume that because God has called them to write, they don't need any help. They don't need any training. All they need is to hear from the Lord and put it out there. And that's not the case. Every industry requires some level of training. And when you look in scripture, I mean, it talks about training people up, and you learn from people. And even Saul, who was a Pharisee, so he had a lifetime of scripture learning. He still had to take time and get to know Jesus. And he had to learn Christianity so that he could see how the Jewish scripture and Christ the person came together. So to say I don't need help and I don't need training is to completely discount, like you said, the way the Lord has set everything up. We're here to help each other and to work together. And you want to give the Lord your best effort and your best product. So if you can't take the time to do it yourself, I learned how to edit my own books because that's a whole nother story. So it took me 10 years to get my first manuscript published. So if God gave you a story and you're looking to get it out in 12 months, I would take that back to the Lord and ask for some clarification on that.
Yeah, that's good. And speaking of time, when you self-publish, you can slap that baby together and get it out really quick. When you are publishing with a traditional publishing house, you've already mentioned at least 5 or 7 different components, different individuals or departments who touch your book. What's the average turnaround time now?
Minimum 12 months.
And that's from contract to release.
Yes. It depends. There may be some smaller publishers that aren't putting out as many books. So because of that, they can, do the turnaround a little faster. At Ironstream, from the time the contract is signed to the time the book comes out, you're looking at a minimum of 12 months. Often 12 to 18 months is kind of average. But if you've got a larger publisher that's looking ahead, even, they may go ahead and sign contracts for as far as 18 to 24 months. So it's just, they're looking so far ahead into the future. So you can plan on, even if you wrote a fantastic book, got it edited, and you did all of your work in 6 months, you're still going to have to wait.
One of the reasons I wanted to bring that up was because authors oftentimes feel like I have to hurry or I'm going to miss the opportunity. And it's good to have that motivation. But at the same time, this is kind of more of a long game. It's not a flash in the pan game. You have time to really do the work to make this really good. And the benefits from my perspective, if you're going to invest anywhere in book publishing, whether you're doing it yourself or with a publisher, editing is the number one place to put your money.
Absolutely.
Because if a person can't get through the first few pages or first few chapters without just thinking, oh my goodness, you have to have it well done. Or, okay, so you sold some copies, but they didn't read it. Or
Right.
then they wouldn't share it and they can't give you a good review, so it's a lot of work for not much if you don't do the editing part of things. What are the three best things we can do in working with an editor?
Number one, listen. And I often tell authors, part of that, it's not physically listening because we do most of our work on our laptops. But once I submit my edits to them, I want them to read through that. Very often they're shocked. So I tell them to go ahead, close their laptop, go eat some pizza, go eat some chocolate, go scream at the sky, cry, whatever they need to do, but then come back to it in 2 days. And I tell them, I don't want to hear from them for 48 hours because within 48 hours, they're emotional. So then you go back and you read through everything again and listen, read the comments and see what truth is there in this? Because there may be some, I don't agree with that, but really listen to what your editor is saying, process what they're telling you, and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make these changes and we're going to see what happens. Second best thing you can do is ask questions. I've worked with clients before and with authors before who didn't understand what I was saying. So then when they submit their revisions to me, nothing's done properly. If it's not clear, ask a question. I don't know a single editor who is upset with anyone who has a question because it's not helping you at all if you don't understand what I'm saying. It's clear to me because I've been doing this for years, but I want to make sure that it's clear to the author. And a lot of times that starts some brainstorming and then things just snowball. And this one thing that was, really just under their skin and aggravating them, they ask a question, you talk, and either 4 emails later or 20-minute phone conversation later, they've got this brilliant idea and they can't wait to sit down and implement it. And the third best thing you can do, trust us. Editors are the professionals. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's not just about understanding punctuation and grammar, which changes. A lot of people don't understand that. It's fluid. The Chicago Manual of Style, which is kind of our rule book, it changes throughout the years. We understand that. We know what the publishing industry is doing. We know what kind of patterns and trends are happening. So just because you wrote something, and oftentimes you'll submit a manuscript that you wrote 10 years ago. Some things have changed since then. Unless you're reading all of those industry newsletters, and unless you're attending all of these conferences, I'm going to 8 conferences this year. I don't know many authors that attend 8 in a year. So I'm staying on top of the industry and I'm trying to learn as much about it as possible. So when I give you suggestions, you can trust me. I'm trying to make it so that your book is not only the fantastic story or, the fantastic Bible study that you wanted it to be, but also that it's going to reach an audience in a way that they want to be reached. So just because you like it, you might have to do a few tweaks because that's what the audience wants. Right. So, just trust your editor. The publishers hired them for a reason. They got into this industry for a reason. Right. I know very few editors who are in it just to prove to you how much they know. They're in it because they want to see good books published.
And God has literally gifted you guys in a way that I am not an editor. I mean, I sometimes do an edit. If somebody needs a quick edit, I can do an edit and get you to the next level. But I can't do what you guys do. I'm not that perfectionistic in my thinking about words and structure and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, good enough, you know. And so it's a gift actually that you have that most people don't have.
Well, and like you had said earlier, with the body, everybody does things differently, and I love editing. And I think since I became an editor, now I tell people I'm an editor who writes, because I actually think I enjoy editing more than I enjoy writing. Actually, I know that I do. But when I self-published a novella earlier this year, I hired my own editors because I am not a proofreader and I am not a copy editor. The copy editors are those grammar Nazis. I'm terrible at that. Split infinitives, comma splices, I don't care as long as the story's good. So I hired my own. And also, the cover design. I don't do well with visual art. I can do words. I'm not even going to try to design my own cover. So I'm going to hire somebody to do that because she's talented and she's passionate. And what she put out is way more beautiful than I could have even dreamt of.
Yeah.
And that's where so many editors are. We might not be good with math. We might not be good with pictures. We might not be good socializing. But we like words. We love words and we love stories. And so when you can find, even going back to the doctor, do you want to go to a doctor who's just in it because, what else are they going to do? Or are you going to go to a doctor who loves people, and is passionate about helping people and helping people get better and live healthy lives? And that's what most editors do. So
that's awesome. Awesome. And for those of you who are listening, if you are a Christian speaker at womenspeakers.com, and if it's a featured profile, we're doing this month for just a low fee. You can get access to one of these awesome editors like Karin, or there's a group of you guys, 9 of you who have made yourself available to us if you have a proposal. And what we want to do next is take you through the 7 components of a book proposal. And then these editors will be willing to look at your book proposal, edit it, so that when you send it, see, when we started talking about this, Karin, I remember you were all over it, just working right with the publishers to make sure an acquisitions editor at a traditional publishing house would look at the manuscript or the book proposal. But then we were thinking about, but if you send it in and it's not really well polished, the chances of getting past that first gatekeeper are just slim. Whereas if you have it polished up, then your chances of moving to the next level with that are just much greater.
Absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, those 3 quick and easy fixes, just having an editor make sure that you're formatted properly and that you are submitting. If you're saying, okay, well, I'm writing a Christian living book, but then you have pages and pages of scripture reference and all this. Are you sure it's not a Bible study? They can help you make sure you're submitting to the right genre, in the right genre, which may submit to a different publisher completely.
Yeah. Excellent. So the first thing that you need to get ready for a book proposal is the publishing history and goals. So very briefly, what would that include?
Well, you want to know, first of all, when you send and this is for the proposal that you're sending in, is this, the speakers. If you're planning on self-publishing, you really don't need to worry about the proposal because you get to make all of the decisions. This is if you want to be traditionally published, and there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. Just realize you're going to be a small business owner and you need to look at it as if you're running a small business. But know what your plans are. If you're willing to give up a little bit of your creative control, and if you're willing to work on someone else's schedule so that you can focus more on the writing, work on this proposal, submit it traditionally. If, however, you want to make all of the decisions and you want to make sure that you have the final okay on everything, this may not be for you. You may want to consider self-publishing. And at that point, again, you probably don't need the proposal. So don't torture yourself with writing a proposal if you don't have to.
And I want to, yeah, and I want to just interject here. So we've owned some businesses, a restaurant, a retail store like that. And in writing, even if I'm going to self-publish, I go through this process myself because it lends so much clarity to the project. It's like almost a blueprint for success, whether you're going to submit it or not. So I challenge you, even if you're self-publishing, you might want to at least look at these things carefully. So when a publisher says, tell me your publishing history, what do they want to know?
They are looking for everything. So your history is going to be, do you have a blog? Are you contributing to that regularly? Or do you contribute to someone else's blog regularly? Do you have articles that are published? So even if you are submitting a book, your publishing history is important because it lets the publisher know that you're experienced in this industry. When I got started, I was still working on books. I didn't know anything, so I started writing for the local newspaper. Well, then I was able to say I have 550 articles that have been published. Mm-hmm. It's not a full-length book, but they know I can work with an editor. I can meet deadlines. I know how to work within the standards that the newspaper set for me. So it gives them a little bit of understanding of who you are. Mm-hmm. And also, if they want to check and see, look at your history, they can Google you and maybe read some of your articles and get an idea of who you are and what you've written. So, now, all of that is important.
Yeah. What if you have a book, but you really don't have any published works to this point? How do you phrase that?
If you don't have, let them know what you're doing to help. So have you joined writing groups? Have you taken classes? So, if you haven't written anything, but you are a member of Christian Women Speakers, say that. Let them know that you are not just putting together something and you want somebody else to publish it. And right, exactly. So let them know. So when I got started, I let them know that this was a completed manuscript. I was working on my second. So I wanted them to know that I was thinking ahead. I was a member of American Christian Writers Association and a member of American Christian Fiction Writers. So they knew that I was investing some of my time and some of my money to get to know other authors, to get to know more about the industry. So just to kind of give them those glimpses of what it is that you're doing. Because if all you've done is written a book and you haven't done any research or any studying, that is going to be a red flag because you haven't invested anything. Why would they invest in you?
Good. Now, what about, and then we're going to keep going here, but what about the author who has a couple books out there, but they haven't done that well and they're looking for a publishing house? What can they do?
If they haven't done well, what you're going to want to focus on is letting the publisher know how you are going to get involved to help the next book be more successful.
Okay, so we'll go down to this one in a moment. Then we'll get to that one. Okay, so that would be under that one. Great. How do you describe the genre and the target audience?
Again, making sure, and this is how an editor can help. You want to make sure that you are pitching the right genre, that you are submitting to the publisher who publishes that genre. But you also need to know your target audience. There is no such thing as a book for everyone. There is no such thing as a book for anyone from 10 to 99. You have to think of the types of people who would be reading your book. So are you writing a Christian living book on, say, a topic of hope, and you're writing it for married women? So maybe your target audience is the same audience who reads Lisa TerKeurst books. So, okay, I'm going to go see who reads her books? Well, my audience is going to be married women, women with children, working women who are, 30 to 50 years old. That is a target audience because you're not going to be writing about grandchildren. You're not going to be writing about retirement. And that helps you and the publisher know okay, we are, the publisher, oh, we already have connections with this audience. They already read our books. We know exactly how to market to them. So make sure you know who your audience is very specifically. Again, there's nothing for everyone.
Right. And you mentioned now, like finding someone like Elisa Turkos, just another author or several authors that already are writing in your niche, and then doing a market comparison. So on that one, there's a lot of specific information you can find online about how to do a market competition. But the value of this, I find this one really valuable, even as a self-publisher at this point. I'm mostly going that direction. And it's really helpful to see what's out there and what people are really buying and what they're saying in the comments.
Absolutely. And if you're going to a traditional publisher with this, the value in that, first of all, you're letting them know that you have done the research. You are never going to copy what someone else does. Right. But if you know who your target audience is and you know what other books they're reading, you can go online and you can see what type of ads are they running. What are the websites, like what are the words that they're using to get people's attention? You can use that in your marketing as well. And you can use that when you're talking about, okay, these are the comparable books in my genre. She's talking to this group of people. I want to reach that group of people, but I'm also going to touch on this topic that's not spoken about. So we have a lot of the same topics. And I do this a lot because I work primarily with fiction. I will let people know, I like this kind of author here and I like this author here. So if you like either of those, it's kind of a nice combination, because then you've got two audiences that you can reach, two audiences that you're telling the publisher, I know we can reach both of these audiences. So they're looking at, okay, well, instead of selling the book to this 500 people, we can market it to this group of 1,000 people. So all of it is just about the work that you're doing, the studying that you're doing, because whether or not you want to, you will be marketing your book. You will be marketing yourself. It's just, I mean, you don't want to trust somebody else to do it all anyway. But you're laying the foundation. Yes, it's a reality. But if you're doing that work now, then when you get the contract, or even if you're self-publishing, once you get the book to the point where you're ready to start launching it, you've already done all that research, so you know what steps you need to take next.
On that, before we move on to the marketing plan too, on that point, if you say there simply isn't a book out there, there really isn't a book like mine. I just want to tell you that my very first book, there wasn't a book out there like it, because I interlibrary loaned 200 books that I thought would say what I was going to say in my book, and I couldn't find one that said it. So literally, there wasn't a book out there like mine. However, there were 200 books close enough to like mine that I interlibrary loaned them. So if you just are persistent, you'll find other books. And your potential publisher, partner, or agent, they need to know that there's people actually looking to read a book like yours before they can publish it. If nobody cares about it, they can't publish it, because they have to actually sell a certain number of books in order to just recoup their investment in you. Yes. Let's move into this marketing plan then. How detailed do you need to be? And as an editor, what do you love to see in a marketing plan?
As much detail as possible. It's not enough to say, well, I know some people at the radio station and I'll send out a press release. I want to know, I have connections at these magazines. I know this person at this broadcasting company. I will personally contact them. And I know it's not a word people like, but what's your platform? I know that I have 4,000 people that follow me on Facebook, and I have 10,000 people over on Twitter that I can reach out to. Huge for all authors. If you don't already have it, start your newsletter list now. Don't wait until your book is published. Don't even wait till you start submitting it. Start building your newsletter list now. Is it okay to pitch a couple of books here?
Yes.
If you're writing fiction, you want Newsletter Ninja. If you're writing nonfiction, it's your first 1,000 copies. Those are 2 books that talk about how to build your newsletter following,
Nice.
Regardless, like I said, if it's fiction or nonfiction. They're fantastic books. I own and have read both. Social media is social. It's where you connect with people. It's where they find out who you are. Newsletter is where you sell your books. Those are the people who are really invested. So start building that. If you come to me as a first-time author and you're like, I've got 1,500 people on my newsletter list, that's amazing. That automatically turns me on. Or even if you say, I only have 500, but I've already started this. What connections do you have? Well, I already know this author, so I'm going to ask her to endorse. And I have connections with these people. This can be hard for Christians because, you don't want to brag. You don't want to be proud. This is not an issue of pride. This is an issue of being honest. Do you know these people? Have you met these people? Are they willing to help you? Are they willing to endorse you or at least, share on this blog? Well, I've got connections at this newsletter and it goes out to 20,000 readers. Awesome. Right. Let them know that you're willing to do it. So just go down your whole, this is where you want to name drop everybody that you know, every connection that you have, from here on out, I'll absolutely, next time I get asked to speak at a conference, I'll be like, well, I know Marnie, if you need to talk to somebody, if you need a reference. So yeah, you absolutely want as much detail. And if you don't have anything, start asking, if you don't have anything and you're scared, hire somebody. There are some great PR firms and there are some great people out there that work specifically with authors. But this is an investment in your future. If you plan on writing more than one book, if you plan on, having these resources to help in your writing career or your speaking career, go ahead and invest that money now, because if you can start off on the right foot, then your next book is only going to be, it's going to be a little bit easier because you've already got the foundation and you're going to be building on the foundation instead of ripping it apart and trying to start over again.
Mm-hmm. And I would just, like you said, to start where you are. And if you don't have connections or if you don't have a newsletter or whatever, just start where you are and go forward. And honestly, it may take you a little longer to get going, but if you just start, like we said, the book publishing process is a long process. So you have time to get going and just be courageous. I do a lot of endorsements through womenspeakers.com. If people, my gals, the featured speakers especially, get to be on the radio show with me that has a large audience, that helps a lot. People ask me, what are your numbers? Because their publishers are looking for numbers, specific numbers. Well, who would you say has too little numbers to even bother submit? Don't submit if you don't have at least what?
That's hard to say. In fiction, you can have smaller numbers because in fiction, nobody knows who you are. They're not looking for expertise. They're looking for a good story. So have some social media. You don't have to have tens of thousands. But if you have 1 or 2 social media platforms that you're doing well, you're regularly engaged in. I know Edie Melson and Diane Mills have a great book on getting your social media platform started. It's a short little book. You can pick it up.
Cool.
Kind of the whole, who was it? Colonel Sanders, do one thing and do it. Colonel Sanders, or maybe it was Orville Redenbacher, do one thing and do it well. It's better to do 1 or 2 social media platforms well than to spread yourself too thin. But again, you're going to have to find out where your audience is. If you're writing young adult, don't be on Facebook. That's not where the young adults are. So you just get started with that. Now, when you're writing nonfiction, that's different. I have heard from some agents, in the past year or so, you need to at least have a comma in your numbers. So on Facebook, on Twitter, if you don't have that comma, you don't bother. But you need to realize when you're writing nonfiction, if you're writing Christian living, you're going to be going up against Mary DeMuth and Lisa Turkhurst and Bevere. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that already have name recognition, that already have proven their experience. So if you have no platform whatsoever as a nonfiction writer, start with that first. Start building your expertise, or see, can you co-author with someone, or can you get someone who can come up and really support you in that, who can give you a great endorsement, because that one, people will ask, well, why should I get this from you when I can get it from this person? So
yeah. We are running out of time. I know you have a plane to catch, and we've got to wrap this up here. So really quick, USP is the main hook. I do a whole training on 30-word wonders, and this is where you call it elevator pitch. Whatever you're going to, what is your book actually about? Like, if you only had 2 sentences to say, why should somebody read this book? What would you say? That's the USP. The synopsis is a single page, 1 to 2 pages, a single space, 1 to 2 page synopsis, an overview that just is a little longer. And that is
no surprises. If this is fiction, you're telling the whole story. It's not back cover copy. So
do the spoiler.
Everything. And the same with the nonfiction. You don't leave any questions unanswered. Answer everything.
Good insight. And then 3 sample chapters. Should these be the first 3 chapters, or does it matter?
Yes, first 3.
Awesome. Karin, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
This was fun. We were just having too much fun. We could have gone on for a long time here.
Oh gosh, I know. I always tell people, I'm like, you would be amazed at how much information you can get out of me for nothing more than a latte. Like, take me out, buy me a coffee, we'll talk for hours.
Oh, that's so great. And you guys can check now, Karin, you are now an editor, not an acquisitions editor anymore. You're an editor with Iron Stream Media. So when you do a submission there, that will not go directly to Karin. However, this is the main way to get in. And Karin is part of our speaker and author boost in September here, where if you have a book proposal that's getting close to ready, you definitely want to participate. You can just go over to marnie.com/preview_speaker boosts. Preview_speaker boosts, and you'll be able to find all the details there, including Karin and 8 other wonderful, highly recommended editors who will help you take that proposal from just okay or passable to something that's really going to catch the eye of an acquisitions publisher editor. All right. Thanks so much, Karin, for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And you guys, thanks for being here. It's so fun to have you with us. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you check out the Speaker Author Boost, and I'll see you next time. Bye.